What is happening, everybody? Picking Fights Tom here for OTH MMA, the podcast, the YouTube show. It's up to you. We're still figuring it out. But we got today UFC London. It's a fantastic card full of high-powered, KO-worthy events and matchups. Can't wait to break it down. I am here with Jamie Frodo MMA at Brew Crew Bruno and at Austin Marr MMA. Guys, how are you doing? We'll kick it off. Start with Jamie. How you doing today? The Invicta guy, the resident Invicta guy.
I'm doing awesome, man. The Invicta card last night rocked, and I'm ready to hit the road tomorrow morning. I've got Cage Warriors 141 tomorrow night in London from the O2, and then I'm going to be there in the stands for UFC London. I can't fucking wait, man.
Busy. Bruno, how you doing, man?
Fantastic. Happy to be here. I'm excited for this weekend's card. Last time on March 19th, that's a special day. That's my birthday. So there is a lot to live up to with this card, and I just can't wait, y'all.
Absolutely. And then over to the man in the bottom left, Austin. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. Glad to be here. Can't wait for UFC London. Last time they were there, it was fireworks, so ready to see another card.
Exactly. You said it. It was fireworks. Fireworks is typically an American thing, but hopping over the pond and looking forward to see what the UK guys have in store for us. First fight up that we wanted to talk about is going to be Nathaniel Wood taking on Charles Rosa. Who wants to take this one first? Who wants to chat about this one?
I think I'll lead with this one, Tom.
All right.
Yeah, so absolute banger matchup. The matchmakers got it 100% right with this one. Nathaniel Wood has been basically undefeated all through his Bellator and Cage Warriors career, and the only two people that have ever stopped him in the UFC were John Dodson, who at the time had like one of the single best strength of schedules in the division in the UFC. He's got 2 losses to Demetrius Johnson. He's got a loss to Petr Yan. And, he was getting pretty much pieced up by Nathaniel Wood until he caught him with a right cross early in the third. And then, Casey Kenny beat him in a decision. And that's, very much a typical American wrestler takes down and lays on top of the British kickboxer. So I'm really excited to see Nathaniel Woods get back in there. He hasn't fought since 254, since Khabib v. Gaethje. So he's had a bit of a layoff. I think he's had a few injuries. But, I'm sure he'll be excited to get back out there, the former Cage Warriors 135 champ. And obviously the guy that he's facing off against, Casey Kenny, is stylistically a little difficult for him, but I think Nathaniel Wood's power in this one will very much be a little bit more than an equalizer and should give Woods the edge, especially with Kenny's with Charles Rosa.
Rosa.
Yeah, sorry. I think Woods' power here will certainly be an equalizer in this bout. Any other thoughts, guys?
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say that.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, Nathaniel Wood, the thing that sticks out for me in this bout against Charles Rosa is, he's going to have 7 years in youth on his side. He's a minus 490. So minus 490 favorite here. And he's going to be playing to his hometown group, hometown fans. It's basically a home game for him. And the other interesting aspect, we got Great Britain top team taking on American top team from Boston Chong, Charles Rosa. I think this one is probably going to be pretty firm in the Nathaniel Wood camp. I mean, you got 3 out of his last 5 for Charles Rosa are losses. This guy doesn't easily get finished. So I'm not thinking that Nathaniel Wood's going to go out there and finish him, but I do think Nathaniel Wood is definitely going to be ahead on points for at least 2 of the 3 rounds.
Most definitely. I remember that Casey Kenny fight didn't that have like one of the most ridiculous paced fights of that card or of recent memory? I mean, I think it was 1-1 going to the third, and Casey Kenny kind of just outgassed him. So Nathaniel's definitely amped up his cardio. He's going to be ready for high pace. And looking at the stats, I mean, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, looking at the stats, Nathaniel Wood lands almost 2-1 significant strikes per minute compared to Charles Rosa. So I don't even think a high pace is going to happen, or at least Rosa is going to push it. So I think, Nathaniel, if he upped his cardio and pushes that pace, I definitely think he'll cruise to a victory on this one for sure.
Awesome. Any final thoughts from Austin?
Yeah, I just think, just piggybacking off what they said, I think it's kind of clear what Nathaniel Wood needs to do to win this fight. Just keep it kickboxing range. And, I think he's just going to cruise out a decision.
I hear you. Well, moving up the card to one of the other prides of the UK, Mason Jones, getting put on this card kind of last minute, right? Wasn't this fight kind of thrown together in the last few days or weeks here? Mason Jones, knowing that he wanted to get on the card, figured out a way. I think Ludovic Klein was like scheduled against somebody else, and then they had it moved up. But yeah, I'm thinking this is going to be another one. You know what? I really don't like the idea of picking with all the UK fighters because they're going to be amped up. For some people, I think that can go the wrong way, like be a disincentive, come out there and be a little bit too excited by the crowd. But I don't think that's going to be Mason Jones in this case. I think Mason Jones is I think he's a big, tough guy. I think he's very, very well-rounded. I think he's going to actually be the much heavier-looking guy when he gets in the ring against Ludovic Klein. And I think there is a pretty good opportunity for Mason Jones to finish this fight. However, Ludovic Klein should not be dismissed as an opponent here. Who wants to kick this one off? I guess second, because I kind of did a little bit of a chat about that.
I can,
Jamie, you got
yeah, I can bounce off this one. I'm a huge Mason Jones fan. I love the fact that he leans into, his Welsh heritage. I mean this with all the love in the world, Mason. He looks kind of a bit like an orc. He's big and muscly, and he's got that big square head. And his fight with David OTHMMA is an absolute banger. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. It was in the Apex. No crowd, and you can hear the grunts and the impacts, and it's fucking fantastic. He's got the power, he's got the speed, and as you said, Tom, Klein isn't Klein's not a nobody. He got anacondaed by Nate Landwehr and came back and won the split decision over Devontae Smith at 272, which was, it was a pretty lackluster fight, but he got the dub. But Klein also has the kickboxing pedigree as well. He's got the knockout over Shane Young, and I think most of his wins actually come via finish once he can get going. This is my pick for fight of the night. I've got a feeling this is gonna have the London crowd in an uproar.
Well, there's a reason that Dana and the powers that be put this as your featured prelim bout. As of right now, subject to change, we still have, I guess, when are the official weigh-ins? Is that still tomorrow morning with the time change? I don't know what that official timing looks like.
I think it's around 5 p.m. UK time tomorrow, so about noon US time or Eastern time. I agree with you. But I do think that Mason Jones, he's going to have the big head, which means he's going to have a really, really, and that's not a figurative big head, that's a literal big head, which means he's going to be fairly difficult to knock out. And I don't think Ludovic Klein's going to have the ability to get it going. He's going to have, I think, is a fair bit of height disadvantage. They're going to have the same reach here, but I think Mason Jones is just going to be too big. And I think, with those handful of grappling disadvantages and grappling loss that Ludovic Klein has, I think Mason Jones, should it have to get there, he has that, kind of in his back pocket, especially being the bigger guy. Bruno, Austin, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm looking into this, and Jones is replacing Ignacio Bahamondes. I believe the Chilean striker. So that's a big switch up in the game plan for Klein and his camp. I'm sure on only a couple weeks' notice, going from, a tall striker to Mason Jones, who's more or less your overall well-rounded MMA fighter. So that could easily throw a wrench in his plans on kind of just how they were setting everything up. So I'll be curious to see how they respond to the style that Jones has.
I'm actually going to play the heel role here, and I'm picking Ludovic Klein. I think people overrate the grappling disadvantages a little bit, and I think he's got enough power in his hands that he can catch Mason Jones with it being short notice. I'm mostly just banking on it being the short notice, but Bruno makes a good point about how Ludovic now has to prepare for a whole new, different type of opponent. But I'm still riding with Klein.
Making quick enemies of Jamie in the top right box. Here you are, Austin. Moving on up the card. This is the fight that I'm personally most looking forward to. I think this one is going to be a banger. And I think everybody's looking forward to it, unless your name is Charles Johnson or you're affiliated with him in any way. I think Muhammad Mokaev, stylistically, is a bad matchup for Charles Johnson. Mokaev, of course, can do it all. He's got power in his hands. He's got really, really slick grappling and jiu-jitsu ability. Charles Johnson, of course, being a long-rangey fighter, is going to be his UFC debut. Taking it, it's not – I think this one might even be a little bit shorter notice than typical. I think this is really where Muhammad Mokaev kind of puts that exclamation point on his arrival to the UFC. He's going to do it in front of the UK crowd. This is going to draw probably the most amount of eyeballs of any of the fight nights. I guess it's still technically a fight night, but of any of the fight nights so far this year. And I think Muhammad Mokaev, after this fight, after potentially, yet performance of the night, I think that's right there for him to go out and snatch. Hopefully I'm not understating Charles Johnson too much, but in the handful of fights that I've watched of his competition isn't that phenomenal. And he doesn't seem to have any of the talents or the skills that I would look for to beat Muhammad Mokaev, and that's outstanding grappling or outstanding on the feet. Charles Johnson is better on his feet than he is grappling wise, but doesn't excel at a UFC level in either place. So I'm really worried about him, his brain, his consciousness going into this fight against Muhammad Mokaev. Let's kick it off to Austin first. What do you think, pal?
Yeah, I think this is just, pretty clear and easy for Mokaev. Ground control domination. I think he's just going to ride out a pretty dominant decision victory.
For me, honestly, yeah, I believe Mokaev's the biggest favorite on the card, or one of the biggest at almost a minus 500. My big question is, I'm going to see if he can beat his record, stoppage win last time. It was 58 seconds. I want to see if he can beat it this time and get that crowd going. So that's the biggest challenge, I think, in this matchup is just, can he beat his past finish victory?
Absolutely. I don't think he's going to be going for the speed so much as kind of coming in and putting on a show-stopping performance against, the former LFA champ. I heard somebody, I can't remember, I think it might have been Bisping on his Believe You Me podcast earlier this week, talking about Muhammad Mokaev having been promised $100,000 bonus by one of his sponsors out in the Middle East for a second round submission. So I can only imagine the bet slip that guy has on Muhammad Mokaev by second round sub. But yeah, I absolutely can't see. I struggle to see any path to victory for Charles Johnson. Frankly, he's coming from the LFA. Most of his wins are all by finish. He's got that one anaconda, but Mokaev doesn't cut a whole lot of weight. He's almost a natural 125er. He doesn't get clipped a lot. He's lightning fast. He's slick with his strikes. He's even slicker with his submissions. Yeah, I cannot wait to see this live. I firmly believe that if anybody is going to beat John Jones' record to be the youngest UFC champion, it's going to be Makhachev. He earlier this year, he asked to fight on UFC Long Island, UFC London, and UFC 277 back to back to back, and I don't have a doubt that this guy would do it if Dana gave him the chance.
Well, that obviously is going to depend on the opponents that he gets matched up with for each of those three. But I hear what you're saying. This guy's a super exciting prospect. He has all of the skills, and even better is his phenomenal grappling base paired with the speed. I mean, that has been kind of the combination that has launched a lot of careers. Just comes to mind. I know he hasn't won a ton lately, but it makes for super exciting fights. Michael Chandler, but Khamzat Chimaev, that insane grappling base and then speed and power combination on the feet. That is what I think is going to be the prototype MMA fighter moving forward. Speaking of somebody who is not really the prototype MMA fighter, somebody who likes to get punched in the face and exchange back, but at the end of the day, he'll take an elbow to the dome if it means he'll go down and you'll follow him down there. Paul Craig. It's a shame that we didn't have Martin Hamilton here to do that pronunciation in its truest form for us. But he's taking on Volkan Oezdemir, who is your prototypical stand-up striker. He will throw a couple leg kicks here and there, but he stands in a very Sean Strickland style stance. He moves forward, and I don't know if Volkan Oezdemir is going to have the 1-2 power to shut off Paul Craig. Paul Craig, historically has taken a lot of shots right to the face in order to bring people down. Now, he has done that before. I'm not saying he is totally, the Max Holloway of the 205-pound division, but he does have a pretty solid chin, and he is willing to take one to get the fight to the ground. I don't think Oezdemir is going to have the power to put him away in that one shot that Paul Craig is going to allow him. Also, Paul Craig's stand-up has been getting increasingly better every time we've seen him. So that's not like, when I say that he will take one to give one, I'm not saying that he's doing that because that's his only option. He can definitely stand and bang. I think Oezdemir is going to have the advantage on the feet, but Paul Craig is going out there, getting the fight to the ground. He's pulling guard. He's getting to the ground however he can. He also has an underrated clinch game as well. I like Paul Craig a lot. If Volkan Oezdemir gets anywhere close to him, which he may not have a say in the matter, Paul Craig is going to probably pressure him. Volkan Oezdemir, of course, does his best work moving forward. So having two guys that are both going to move forward, it kind of takes away that potential leg opportunity for Oezdemir. He's going to be straight punching. I like Paul Craig a lot. I think when I filmed my earlier video, he was a underdog, believe it or not. I don't know what Vegas is seeing to expect that, but yeah, I'm expecting big things from Paul Craig. I'm expecting a submission and potentially in the second round. Oezdemir doesn't have terrible takedown defense. He doesn't have terrible grappling, but Paul Craig has the dirtiest jiu-jitsu in the 205 and really in the UFC as a whole. What do you think, Austin? And we'll leave Jamie for last because I'm sure being from that region of the world, he's going to have something fun for us. Austin, kick it away, my friend.
Yeah. I agree completely. I'm going with Paul Craig, second round submission. I think it's going to get dicey in the first round for him a little bit. But like you alluded to, Paul can take some damage. He can survive through it, and he can either trip you up to take you to the ground, or you're going to fall him to the ground, and he's going to catch you with something on the way down. But I think that's pretty much it I've got to say. I mean, Volkan, he's got more power definitely on the feet, and he could definitely put Craig's lights out. And I think this is going to be the type of fight where it's going to answer really, because for myself, I've had doubts about Paul Craig's overall MMA skill level, but I think with this fight, if he beats somebody like Volkan Oezdemir, it proves that, okay, he really is working towards the top 5 of the division potentially. And whereas on the flip side, I think, Volkan really needs to win this fight. I think he's 0-2 in his last 2 fights. So, it's kind of do or die on both sides.
Yeah, I expect this to be a very sloppy start, very sloppy fight, I should say, for the first round or so. We know when Oezdemir went on that crazy win streak, he was just knocking people out. So, I mean, his past couple losses have been by decision, but Craig likes to bring the fight. So this could very much be very action-packed until it ends. But I still do think overall, Craig's just got that momentum on his side. He'll have the crowd on his side. And I think he will be able to somehow get Oezdemir into his guard or into some type of submission attempt where ultimately, as we've seen in the past, Oezdemir is kind of faltered on the ground. And if Craig can work it and somehow just get there, I definitely see him getting the victory and getting his hand raised this weekend.
Jamie, does he paint his face?
Yes, absolutely. I gotta hand it to him, man. I love my Celtic brother, the Bear Jew Paul Craig. The guy was a high school teacher before he got signed to the UFC, and I think it was after his loss to Khalil Roundtree, he went into school like the following Monday, fresh off the plane from Vegas, hadn't showered, walking around with his eye busted up, limping, and the principal was like, "Dude, what the fuck? Like, you can't do both. You have my entire belief and support behind you. All the kids love you. Go and do it." And the guy's lost 2 fights since. One to Jimmy Crute by Kimura, who's, Jimmy Crute's just a fucking... I don't think the guy feels pain.
Unless you turn his foot off.
Unless you turn his foot off, but he still tried to fight through it.
He stepped on his foot the wrong way a couple times.
Yeah, exactly. The guy is just seemingly doesn't feel pain. And, Alonzo Manafield, who's gone up to heavyweight, should have never been at lightweight. Or light heavyweight, sorry. Guy was massive. And since then, he's gone 5-0-1, beating Shogun, in my opinion, twice, but drawing once. On the other hand, I do have to give it to Volkan. I'm actually a pretty big fan of him as well, despite his lackluster performances recently. But you look at who he's lost to. Prohaska, I mean, that was one of the knockouts of the year. Magomed Ankalaev, who, Paul Craig is the only guy to ever beat the guy by what I think should have been a technical submission. I can't remember if he actually tapped or went unconscious with 1 second left after Paul got his ass beat for 15 minutes by the guy who, is supposed to be the light heavyweight Habib, or, well, I suppose the light heavyweight Hamzat, because he can actually strike too. He's got the win over Rakic, the win over Latifi, and then the losses to DC, Anthony Smith, and Dominic Reyes. So the guy has almost only lost to champs recently. But if Paul Craig does this, he's, 6-0-1, one of the longest win streaks, I think the longest win streak at light heavyweight. Got to be talking about, a title shot for the Bear Jew at some point. I mean, how many triangles does he have to throw up before, we start saying, hey, look, sure, Yuri can put your fucking lights out, but Paul Craig could shut off the blood to your neck with his thighs in an instant.
That sounded oddly sexual, but listen, I mean, if you're Jamal Hill, he could also break bones in your arm. I mean, there's almost like, I really like Paul Craig and his versatility, like his strength, his chin has held up, unless guys that should be heavyweights, right? He has the ability to take punch. His striking is coming along here, and he's got dirty jiu-jitsu. And the other thing too is he's got a variety of ways he can take you to the ground. Like, he can hit you and then follow up on the ground. He can take you down. Not a huge single or double leg guy, but he is a big pull guard. And the other thing too is, like, anyone seen that movie Here Comes the Boom with the guy from King of Queens, Kevin James?
Kevin James, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that Paul Craig used to be a teacher and was teaching and fighting at the same time, but that's like the entire the entire storyline of that movie. So if you haven't seen it, go watch Here Comes the Boom. It's funny. I think there is a professional fighter in that too, like for the final. I mean, it never mind. I'm getting off course. But the other thing about Oezdemir, and that I wrote down in my notes here, is you need to be able to have a good chin if you're going to be able to move in and beat Volkan Oezdemir. Check. And Oezdemir attempts to knee people as they're going in for that takedown. But the funny thing is that I think Paul Craig is going to be wise to that, and he's not going for a hip, try and, get in deep on the hips. I think he's going to try and take him down right from the clinch. So I think this is going to be really interesting. Volkan Oezdemir, of course, a guy who likes to strike. He's going to want to stay in striking range. So if Paul Craig moves forward, Volkan Oezdemir is going to back up until he's against the cage, and then he has no opportunity to, back up any further. So I think we're all in agreement here. Paul Craig moving forward. I don't know what the lines look like on that. Is anyone able to check that real quick while we move on to the next fight, and then let us know? Because I can't imagine. I haven't seen anybody picking Volkan Oezdemir, but for surprisingly long, he remained the favorite. So, I mean,
I was gonna say, before we move on, I am curious if Craig's gonna kind of use that Do Bronx 10 count, and if he gets dropped, will he be able to chill there, and Oezdemir kind of lets him get back up, or play that sort of game where he's able to rest a little bit, even if that happens. So, be curious to see if Oezdemir does kind of jump in there, if he does drop him.
Yeah, well, in my opinion, Oezdemir is a guy who's not going to put you away with one strike. He needs, he's
100%.
going to stun you, he's going to wobble you, and then he's going to hit you with a couple follow-up shots. You're going to drop, and then he's going to hit you a couple more times, and then the ref's going to step in, or maybe you go out. And I just think that style of striker and power is not going to lend itself well against a Paul Craig, who's going to be like, okay, even if I fall, I'm going to stay down here. I'm going to recover while you make me stand up and then try to keep distance and then try to take you down. I think in order to beat Paul Craig, you got to put his lights out and keep him standing. And I don't know if
100%
can do that.
So I just checked. Paul Craig remains a plus 120 underdog, and his sub prop is sitting around plus 210. So go and hammer the.
What are we missing
out of that? I don't know, man. I really don't get it. Prediction: Paul Craig gets rocked in the first, pulls guard, doesn't get to put anything off, gets rocked in the second, clinches, inside trip, mounted triangle, fingers up, crowd goes nuts. I'll do a shoey.
That would be absolutely dope. The only thing I'm worried about and we've all picked UK fighters this far through, the only thing I am worried is that potential adrenaline dump. Paul Craig fought in front of rabid fans before, and we'll get to it later, but Patty Pimlet saying that Jordan Levitt, he hasn't fought in front of a crowd like that. Well, I don't know. I'm still working on my accent on that one. Molly McCann, Hannah Goldie. I think this one's pretty straightforward. I'm taking Molly McCann as a lock. Hannah Goldie doesn't bring a lot to the table other than her jacked physique. I mean, she might be one of the top 10 most jacked women I've ever seen. But in one of her most recent fights, I mean, she was getting annihilated on the ground, and then she threw up a desperate head and arm triangle, ended up getting the win, and then ran around and hesitant to say surprised almost was the emotion that I got from her. But either way, and the person that she was going up against was not top level competition at all. Not saying that Molly McCann is the top of the top cream of the crop, but I do think Molly McCann is on her way up there, and she has the most important skill set that you're going to need when fighting in front of rabid fans in the O2 arena, and she is absolutely a gamer. She feeds off the crowd, feeds off their energy. She is the opposite of what I was talking about before this, where, sometimes the overall environment can be too much. Not for Molly McCann. She is like a battery, and the more energy you stuff in that thing, the harder it's going to come. She's found this recent ability to finish people with her most recent win against Luana Carolina. I think, and Hannah Goldie gets finished like it's her job. So I'm going to go with Molly Meatball McCann over Hannah Goldie. What do you think, Austin?
Yeah, I'm riding with Molly McCann. I will say, though, that I think Hannah is a bit too much of an underdog in this fight. I think it's just kind of the betting lines, riding with Molly because she's the hometown sweetheart. But I think Hannah's only chance at really beating Molly is to out-will her, out-tough her, and like you mentioned, Molly's going to feed off this energy, and no one's going to beat her when it comes to heart and determination when she's in front of this crowd.
Yeah, I agree with both y'all 100%. I think it's pretty straightforward, Molly McCann with the dub. Hopefully, she can try to recreate some of that magic and keep the crowd into it for the rest of the card. We'll see. I mean, there's only been a handful of women's finishes literally this year. So that's the biggest thing, is just if she can, start to get that stoppage win. If not, probably just cruise to a decision victory.
And let me just add a little bit of color here before passing it over to the closer in Jamie. But listen, Hannah Goldie, she has a decent ground game, but it can be suspect at times. She lost to Deanna Belbita, who's long and rangy, but I wouldn't put her down as like a top echelon striker. Hannah Goldie is slow on the feet. She can get dropped. She had Diana Belbita in big trouble early, but that's not something that I'm thinking. Like Meatball Molly potentially has one of the best trends in women's MMA. So she's going to feed off the crowd. She's against the opponent who is slow on her feet and can get dropped early, has questionable competition, and doesn't really excel in any particular area. This is just going to be a Molly McCann slingshot, right to the top of the power rankings of UFC's most beloved women's fighters, at least in the UK.
100%. I think Molly's already there in the UK and Ireland. She's an Everton fan, which puts her down a little bit in my books. I
don't even know what that means.
I mean, come on. With the picture, guys. Love her to bits. I think her personality, she, as you guys say, she's a battery. She's like a fucking solar panel. Just all that crowd. Her and Patty actually have never lost in cards where they fought on the same card. They're like brother and sister training. I think that Molly's wrestling and jiu-jitsu and all-around grappling and her all-around game, her ability to mix stuff up has only served to have been elevated by working so closely with Patty. She's been over in America. I know she's been training. She actually trained with Jordan Levitt, ironically enough. Last time she was over, she's been at I think she was at Sarah Longo at one point for a couple of weeks. She's been all over the place. She's kind of going through a Masvidal rebirth at the minute, and she's finding her power. She's settled into the weight class. She's gotten that taste for beer under control, and she's managing her weight. She does have, I believe, the shortest reach in the UFC, which is kind of crazy given her boxing heavy style. But that last fight, just that knockout, I wake up in a cold sweat sometimes thinking about it. I'm surprised Carolina has even woken up since it. That was one of the scariest knockouts of the year. It's my pick for knockout of the year. And, she's got the whole Barstool Sports entourage there. Dave Portnoy is going to be there weighing in with her. I can't see this going any other way than, Meatball just turning Hannah Goldie into spaghetti.
Okay, I like that. Nice little pun there. Interestingly enough, and I don't know if this is right, it's Tapology, so I'm inclined to believe it. Molly McCann with a 62-inch reach, Hannah Goldie 61-inch reach. So even just another little notch in the corner of Molly McCann. Not that she needed it. And Hannah Goldie, I just want to mention this. Took I believe it was a loss to Spitfire Whitmire, which I got to put her up there with like one of the better nicknames, Spitfire Whitmire. Anything that rhymes is going to be awesome in my book. Nikita Krylov taking on Alexander Gustafson. Gustafson hasn't fought in 2 years. Before that, took another 1.5-year layoff, and the fight before that was against John Jones. So he has basically 1 or 2 fights removed from fighting John Jones in a fight that is now in the Hall of Fame. Which is really weird to say that 2 fights ago he was in literally a fight that is now in the Hall of Fame. That just shows the inactivity from Alexander Gustafson. And there's a lot of people who are like really high on Gustafson, and they're like, oh, he's been in the gym training for the last 6 weeks really, really hard. I'm like, okay, well, what about the last 102 weeks? Like, what was going on with that? Nikita Krylov or Gustafson, let me just talk about him real quick. Good lateral movement, decent in both areas of MMA, but striking is his forte. He sees a lot of decisions. He's light on his feet for a big guy. He does move around very well, and you cannot take that away from him. He's a big counter puncher. Like I said, moves a lot, so it's really hard to find him. He hasn't been knocked out, and I think he's still only been dropped once in the UFC up till this point. He can be submitted. He's open to mistakes on the ground. He's long, rangy, mobile. Like I said, only knocked down once, and he tends to get better as the fight goes on. So the fact that this is a 3-round fight definitely concerns me if you're going to be an Alexander Gustafson better. For Nikita Krylov, he's a grappler, but he's also a good striker too. He's a very, very good kicker and a sniper with his kicks at that. Also a lateral mover, good takedown defense. I don't think he's going to need that much against Alexander Gustafson, especially because he's going to have the advantage on the ground. So if anything, you're going to see Krylov taking down Gustafson. He has a really, really good mix of takedowns and striking. Nikita Krylov does, and he's very solid off his back. So for those reasons, I'm going to side towards Nikita Krylov. But of course, it is hard to pick this one with the inactivity from Alexander Gustafson. You could really get anything there. What do you think, Jamie?
Absolutely, I completely agree. The inactivity for Gustafson is, it's kind of like he's basically making his UFC debut again, because we really don't know what kind of shape he's in. How's his chin? How's his cardio doing? He's also 35 now, so it's very much his last kind of run at the title. He had that quick jaunt up to heavyweight that ended with him getting armbarred by Fabricio Verdum, which whatever. it's fucking Verdum. But I love Gustafson, both his fights with John Jones. I personally thought he won the first one. He's got the wins over Jan Blachowicz and Glover Teixeira. He's had so many canceled fights, and I personally believe that the fire and his drive for victory might allow him to push through Krylov's takedowns and Krylov's kicks. And I think that if Krylov tastes that kind of power from Gustafson, he's going to try to take him down. I think that, Gustafson 4 or 5 years ago, 100% would have ran through Krylov. Now, he's getting a little older. Does he still have the reactions? Does he have any CT ringing around from some of those elbows from John Jones? Nobody's ever the same after they fight John Jones, and especially after fighting the guy twice. So my heart says Gustafson, my head says Krylov. But in saying that, Krylov has been stopped by Paul Craig, and he's been caught in a few submissions as well. And obviously Gustafson's up there at All Stars in Sweden, training with Hamzat. So I'd imagine that he's been working pretty hard on some of that grappling stuff. So I'm gonna go with Gustafson here. He's the dog, isn't he, for this fight?
Yes, I'm seeing him as the 160 slight dog. But here's another thing about Krylov. Going to be 5.5 years younger, going to only have a reach and a half disadvantage, but he's fighting out of Ukraine. So I think Ukraine has been a sweet spot. A lot of Ukrainian fighters are doing well right now. Hard to bet against Ukraine in these times. Over to you, Bruno.
Yeah, I mean, last win for Gustafson was over 5 years ago, and that was, the spectacular performance against Glover. But I just don't really know what the motivation is anymore, the reason why he's kind of fighting. I mean, the shape he showed up in against Verdum was a little almost embarrassing. I don't want to discredit the man, but that wasn't the Gustafson that we all know and love. So I'm very curious to what this last run he wants to have. But for me, it's just I have to go with the activity of Krylov. I mean, I know he was in London for his last fight. I know he lost to Paul Craig, but he at least has been active. And just seeing off of past history on the ring rust that Gustafson shows, I just don't feel too confident in him kind of bringing back, what we saw back in 2018, 2017, 2016, when he was, neck and neck 1A, 1B of the 205 division. So I don't really know what to say of this, but I'm going Krylov on this one. Decision victory.
I'm going to switch it up, and I'm going with Gustafson. I know, Tom, you said, people are saying that Gustafson, looks like he's in good shape. He's been training hard, but I really do think and believe that he is, mostly because of training with, like you said, Hamzat and the rest of the guys there. I just feel like that's going to reinvigorate him some, and I think he knows this is his last shot, and he doesn't want to go out how he's, more recently been seen. And I think he just wants to really prove that he's still got it to, beat some of these top 15 guys and be a part of that top 15 ranking in the 205-pound division.
Absolutely. Well, I did have a thought earlier about this fight that I think that we could possibly be seeing this be Gustafson's retirement fight, especially if he loses. If he loses, that'll be 4 in a row, and all of absolute wars that the guy has had. He has given so much to us as a fan base. I could see him taking his gloves off and leaving them in the octagon, to be honest. And it breaks my heart to say it, but if he loses, it might be time.
Maybe Misha Tate should think about that also.
Okay, yeah, we're not going to go there, Tom.
Moving up the card, the one that everybody wants to talk about. He's a scouser and they don't get knocked out. I'm still working on it, like I said. A lot of anger coming out of the Pimblett camp towards Jordan Levitt. Pretty indifferent from the Levitt camp. Patty's saying he's talking about Zashait. I don't see it. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't see Jordan Levitt talking a ton of shit. I think him just being like, yeah, he's good. I'm a fan. Like, he's good at this, but like, I think I'll be able to do that. Like, I just like talking like a very like even keel fighter. I'm not seeing what Patty's getting mad at. Patty does bring up a good point. This is going to be the first time that Levitt is fighting in front of a crowd that big and fighting in front of, a crowd that's going to be 100% against him as well. But he's also a really heady guy, Jordan Levitt. He's reading, a book a month or, maybe even a book every week or every 2 weeks. And you could tell it in like kind of like the vernacular in which he talks. Like he is a very good speaker. He's an awkward striker. His Brazilian jiu-jitsu is his bread and butter, even though Paddy Pimblett likes to discredit it a lot. But of course, you're going to discredit anything about your opponent leading up to the fight. The interesting thing that I like about Jordan Levitt, and the thing that I think that is going to help him the most in this fight, is his ability to make the fight be fought at the tempo and the way in which he wants it to. He has the ability to slow things down and make people adapt to his style. Mm-hmm. And I think Paddy, with the anger and with the energy in that environment, is going to come out. And especially, we've seen Paddy leave his chin out there and get like dropped. We've seen him get hurt. I don't know if Levitt's going to have the like power and the striking and the technique to be able to hit Paddy and put him away, say, or even like drop him a little bit. But that rushing, that energy, and that aggression that Paddy is most likely going to fight with, no matter how much he says, no, I'm fine, I'm in a good mood. I don't believe it, because he has like his eyes like turn red when he's talking about Jordan Levitt. And I think that could be a problem. He's banking on the fact that Levitt's head's going to explode when he gets in the octagon. I'm not so sure. I think Levitt is a very even keel guy. He's going to rely on his jiu-jitsu. I still think Paddy ultimately gets the win, because I don't think Paddy gets submitted, and I don't think Paddy gets knocked out. He's going to have the UK judges, so he's going to have that to his side. I think he's probably going to win the first round. He'll probably take the second round too. As the fight goes on, Jordan Levitt has historically had a little bit problems with gas tank, but I don't think that Levitt can overlook, or I don't think Paddy can look past Levitt just yet in the way that he's saying that he basically is. I think this is going to be his toughest test in the UFC and in MMA overall. And I think with a win here, Paddy Pimblett has to get kind of the Molly McCann treatment, where stop, blowing up and then having to shrink back down. There's only a certain amount of time before he gets the Darren Till effect, where that starts to hurt him in terms of injuries from, being out of shape and having to get back into shape. And, I think he's leaning a little bit too much into the barstool role. I mean, listen, the reason that he got here, the reason that he got all of his fans is because of his exciting fighting style. But if he loses, a lot of that goes away. So, or maybe not. Maybe not. He has a fan base that's rabid for him. So I'm not sure it will go away, with one loss. But certainly, it would put a big pause on the Paddy Pimblett hype train if he has, And here's the other thing too. If he has any issues with Jordan Levitt, is what I was going to say. Here's the other thing too. The reason that people were very upset with Izzy Adesanya and his performance over Jared Cannonier, it wasn't that it was a bad performance. It was a little bit lackluster, but it was only lackluster because people had all of these expectations that Izzy was going to go out there, style on him, turn him into Paulo Costa, if not worse, put him away, and then he went out there and he point fought. I get it. Jared Cannonier, if you want to be the champ, you got to beat the champ, and it's Jared Cannonier's job to come forward and make it a fight. And Izzy's long, he's going to stay on the outside, but you can't talk up a fight like you're going to go out there and have this masterpiece and put him away early and then not live up to it and then get mad when people like Chris Pratt are like, hey, you said you were going to knock him out and then you didn't. I felt a little bait and switchy. Well, you're just a fan. He goes, well, I mean, that's pretty – Chris Pratt said, I'm just a fan, but you said you were going to knock him out and you didn't really seem to make an attempt at that. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude. And then Izzy tries to dunk on him. I don't understand that from Izzy, and I think we may have a same issue here with Paddy. Although Paddy's going to go out and he's going to have those fireworks, he's going to try and knock out Jordan Levitt. I don't know if he's going to be able to, but I think people will kind of fall off the train a little bit. Don't you dare yawn at me, Jamie. I'm on a roll here. I just don't think that I don't think what the speak that Paddy is putting out into the universe is going to come true here against Jordan Levitt. And since you were yawning, I want to get your opinion on it. Jamie, what do you think?
I'm just thinking how long you must have been waiting to get that little Izzy rant out of No, I do partially agree with you. I think Paddy needs to seriously grow up. He whenever he came to the UFC, he was talking about how he's been, he rejected offers to join the UFC twice or thrice, and he knew that he wasn't ready until he was. And I think after this fight, he seriously needs to grow up a little bit, stop putting on 50 pounds in 2 weeks. It's easily done when he likes the vacation in America, and I get it too. I'm the same, but he's a professional. He says he wants to be champ. He's not going to get there at this rate if he keeps doing what he's doing. And as well as that, I do 100% agree with you. The 1 year anniversary of his first fight in the UFC is coming up soon. That means that $100,000 contract is going to be up for renewal soon, and a loss to a guy called Spider Monkey that is only really known for his jiu-jitsu when you're supposed to be, a very well-rounded, very powerful, very stylistic striker and grappler, doesn't look that great for the Barstool brand.
He's not only known for his jiu-jitsu, he's known very well for his twerking. So let's give credit where credit is due, okay? He's got some
Absolutely, I 100% agree. But there's 0.0001% chance that he gets to twerk on Saturday night in front of that O2 arena. I think Paddy is right. I think that the aura of the crowd is going to freak him out a little bit. Despite his penchant for twerking, Jordan does seem to be fairly introverted. I think he described himself as an introvert on the MMA hour with Helwani. As you said, he's very well read, but Paddy, when Paddy wants to turn it on, he can turn it on. I think it was an interview with Adam Catterall where he was talking about how in his UFC debut against Luigi Venturini, he heard DC saying, "Oh well, Paddy's losing this. He's losing this fight," and Paddy, thought to himself, "Well, fuck that," and turned it on and put Venturini out. And Venturini not got a bad chin. He's not the most technical, he's not the most skilled, but he's fucking hard to put away. And if Paddy can flip that switch and say, "Fuck you, DC," he's talking about coming out and seriously hurting Jordan, I don't think that Jordan has any real way to prevent that, to be honest, beyond, a lucky inside trip that results in a lucky scramble that results in a lucky body triangle. I'd be very, very surprised if this makes it out of the second round.
Let's shake it up a bit. We'll go over to Austin.
Well, before I get into my breakdown, Tom, you said you don't really understand why Patty, has so much anger towards the Jordan Levitt camp. But if a man told me he was going to knock me out and then twerk on my unconscious body, yeah, no, that's not happening on my watch, buddy. So I can kind of understand where some of the bad blood's coming from. But I think Jordan Levitt's going to give Patty some problems in there. Jordan's a pretty tough fighter. He's 11-1, I think, if I remember correctly. But I think, Patty, like I think it was Tom, you said that, Patty can sometimes get himself into trouble a lot in there. And he does. Sometimes he goes for new things he wants to try, or he gets a little reckless and wild. And that can get him in trouble. I just don't think it's going to get him in trouble with Jordan Levitt. Not at that skill level. Maybe further down the line when he gets to the top 10, top 8 guys, that's when he could really have the hype train derailed. But at this moment, I'm going to ride with Patty in a close decision.
Yeah, I think Patty's coming for it. He's amped up, and I wouldn't be, it's not surprising. Yeah, like y'all said, Levitt's got one KO victory, and it's off of slamming somebody that had him in guard. So the hands aren't really going to be there. I just saw it's about a 3-1 ratio on significant strikes in favor for Patty. So he said he wants to stand it up. If he can keep the guard pulls or the cage trips or any type of takedowns away from him, he can stay in at his distance. I do think he can piece up Levitt, and I think with the crowd and with everything, if he comes out hot in that first minute, 2 minutes, something could happen. I don't think it's going to be a quick finish, but I do like Patty on the feet. And I will say, depending on who's walking out first, the most exciting maybe 90 seconds of this entire night, depending on how the previous fights go, could be Patty's walkout. I watched him multiple times last time when he was in London. It's absolutely electric. So definitely can get in the head of Levitt if he's just standing in the cage chilling.
He will be.
Yeah. So
there's no shot Patty comes out first.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, I mean, that could be a big thing. And then, all of a sudden you hear go and a guy's coming at you with this mob top. So, it's all I'm in favor of Patty. I would agree with the under 2 rounds finish for sure with Jamie. Yep.
Interesting. Again, I think this one does go to decision. I think both guys peak early. I think Patty's gas tank could be potentially questionable. If Jordan Levitt can stay alive through that first, I think this one goes to decision. But that's why we line them up. I was going to say put the ball on the ground and play the games, but that's a football quote. Jamie, do you know football? Just kidding. Jack Hermanson taking on the interim Chris Curtis, taking over for Darren Till. I think Chris Curtis takes this. I mean, Chris Curtis has been training with Sean Strickland, who, although we've never seen it, allegedly has really good ground game. Chris Curtis coming off of stopping all 22 of Rodolfo Vieira's takedowns. He stopped all 3 of Brendan Allen's takedowns. He stopped 3 of Phil Hawes' takedowns. He landed a lot of straight punches in that fight against Rodolfo Vieira, and Vieira and Hermanson have a very, very similar style. I think straight punches get through Jack Hermanson's guard, and that's what Chris Curtis was landing on Vieira and landing powerfully with. So I think he's going to land that on Jack Hermanson just the same. The other thing about Chris Curtis, he's basically only fought grapplers up until this point. So this style of fighter is nothing new to him in the absolute lightest, and he's made all of them stand and strike with him, which is his forte, and not necessarily Jack Hermanson's. The only question that I have about Chris Curtis going into this fight is how affected is he by the Rodolfo Vieira fight? How much did that damage, even though as insignificant as it was, how much did that damage prevent him from training and getting back into camp to be prepared to take on a fighter in Jack Hermanson who was training for this fight 8-10 weeks out? So there is a question mark there that can truly only be answered by like watching the fight and having these two guys line it up. But I think if you got both of these guys with a full camp, I'm betting the house on Chris Curtis. The Action Man is here, and like a year ago, he was fighting on a regional LFA promotion, I believe it was. And you fast forward literally 1 year almost to the day, and he is fighting at the O2 Arena in the co-main event of UFC London. And really, really happy for Chris Curtis. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. I think he is just the type of guy that the UFC wants to promote. And I think this fight against Jack Hermansson is going to be it. Unfortunately for Jack, he goes from a matchup that's great for him with Darren Till to a matchup that's not that great for him with a guy who's a striker, lands the punches that Hermansson seems to get landed on himself, and probably one of the best takedown defenses that we've seen.
Yeah, I agree with about Chris Curtis and his takedown defense. In his last fight with Vieira, he looked phenomenal with stopping the takedowns, because sometimes Vieira, would get in there pretty deep and he still wouldn't be able to get him down, which I think Jack Hermansson is the better, I would say, takedown guy between him and Vieira. But I just don't see him being able to take Chris Curtis down. Even on, short notice, I still don't think it'll matter. Unless Hermansson was to stun him on the feet and have him rocked. But I don't see that happening, because I think Chris Curtis just mixes it up a lot better than Jack Hermansson. So I'm going to ride with Chris Curtis in a 3-round decision. And I think he probably wins all 3 rounds, honestly.
Yeah, I'm going with the Action Man. UFC career, 26 takedowns defended out of 26, attempted on him. Not only does he train with Sean Strickland, but Hermansson's last fight was against Strickland. So he definitely has that confidence knowing, if I can hang with my boy Strickland, I've worked with him, probably trained with him for that Hermansson fight. So, he's familiar with what Hermansson possesses. And unfortunately for Hermansson, it seems like as of late, he's been quite one-dimensional. And if you can stop his takedowns, you can win the fight. I'm just going to go with the veteran, Chris Curtis. He's got great boxing. And if he can, I know he's down about 1.5 inches on reach, but he's got slick boxing. And with that Vieira fight, he was using a lot of rear crosses to the body, which, definitely slowed him down. And I think if he's able to utilize that again, he can definitely slow down Hermansson, wear on his tank, keep stuff in takedowns, and just, keep the fight on the feet and just use his hands. I definitely see him winning all 3 rounds, unanimous decision for the Action Man.
100%. I completely agree, Tom. I like what you said about Hermansson's tendency to, kind of get picked off by those straight shots, just straight through the guard. That's basically what Sean Strickland did for 25 minutes after promising blood and guts and gore. But, yeah, I know. Believe me, I know. There's nothing worse than inviting a group of guys around. Hey, look, this guy's a fucking psycho. He might catch a body, and then for 25 minutes. On the other hand, I don't think I've ever seen a boring Chris Curtis fight. His one loss was to Magomed Sharipov, who's, the fucking PFL Magomed Ankalaev.
Rule of thumb, if the guy's first name is also his last name and it's mostly consonants and V's.
And they're both Magomedov? Yeah, fuck that. He's also, he's slightly older than Hermansson, but has like a third or a quarter of the number of fights. And you got to imagine that's going to help the chin. That's going to help the cardio. He might be a bit less, CTE, ringing about in that noggin. And you do have a point about the fairly quick turnaround from the Vieira fight, but I don't think that took a whole lot out of him. He didn't take a lot of big impacts, and it means he's going basically back-to-back camps, and he looks like he's in great shape. How the fuck he makes middleweight so easily, I'll never ever know, because he looks absolutely yoked. But yeah, I gotta go with the Action Man. Take out a fucking mortgage, refinance your car, put your fucking kids' college funds on the action, man. And honestly, maybe even by finish, because if it was a 5-round co-main, absolutely, I'd expect Chris Curtis to put him out of there. In the 3 rounds, maybe late in the third, but you can't underestimate Hermanson like that. The guy does have a chin.
I thought you were going to tell me to put my kids on it.
Hey, man, that's between you and your kids.
All right, and in our main event, headlining UFC London, the UK MMA premier event of 2022. This is an interesting one. I just saw a video recently where Tom Aspinall was asked about his favorite fighter and asked specifically about Curtis Blades, where he offered up, yeah, that's a bad fight for me. You know, if it was a guy who was just a grappler, cool, I'll get up or I'll submit him. If it was a guy who's just a striker, yeah, I'll knock him out or I'll stand and bang with him. But if it's a guy who does a really good job at mixing up his takedowns and his striking, that's a problem for Tom Aspinall. However, Tom may think it's a problem for Tom. This Tom doesn't think so as much. I'm going with Tom Aspinall. Before my dog starts barking, I'm going to pass it over to Austin for you to give us your breakdown while I go on mute for a bit here.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and go full heel again. Y'all can boo me, but I'm riding with Curtis Blades. Tom Aspinall's right when he says that, this is a bad matchup for him. And the reason being is because Curtis is so well-rounded. He's really tuned up his striking game, especially with the hands. We've seen that with the Junior Dos Santos and the Chris Dawkins fight. Curtis improves every time he steps in there in his striking. He was getting the better of Derek Lewis, but, Derek Lewis just has that one-punch knockout power where it doesn't matter. But because Blades is so well-rounded, and also I dig into the fact that Blades has fought the better competition for sure over Tom Aspinall. Tom's got 2 or 3 guys that are really, top level on his resume, but not like Curtis Blades. We're talking Alistair Overeem, Mark Hunt, Junior Dos Santos. Even though he lost Francis Ngannou twice, Derek Lewis, Chris Dawkins, the list goes on and on for Curtis Blades. And with that, I think he's going to, really test Tom Aspinall's cardio because Tom's never been outside of the second round. And, I think Curtis is going to really try to implement some pressure and maybe mix in the grappling attack as well and really try to focus on testing that cardio of Tom Aspinall and maybe trying to get a TKO finish by ground and pound later on in the fight, maybe 3rd or 4th round.
Yeah, I'm bringing it back to the UK lad. I got to go with Aspinall. I just think he's on the rise. I know Blades is probably definitely his highest profile fight, but just seeing how he's kind of been preparing his own rise and knowing that he's kind of taking each challenge is kind of leveling up little by little. I just think mentally he's in a good spot, but also looking at the fight, I know Curtis is a great grappler and he's got heavy hands, but if he can nullify the takedowns and Aspinall can keep this on the feet, I think his hands are just way too fast. I'm just thinking that Aspinall, he's got it. He's slick everywhere. I think he actually might be better overall everywhere. And I'm just going to go with him. I believe he's going to be able to put away Blades. It's going to be a great fight. I mean, these guys are 2 technical heavyweights. This is definitely not going to be a sloppy swing and leather type of fight. But it could be interesting with the takedowns in the beginning. If we can get some scrambles, some submission attempts, I definitely think Aspinall can get this back on the feet and just wear out on Blades and make him tired, take a sloppy shot, and possibly get subbed out towards the later rounds. So I'm going Aspinall all day.
I gotta agree, man. I think that come 11, yeah, shocker. I think come 11:30 on Saturday night, we're going to be hearing chants of Tommy Aspinall all across London. I think he's faster. He's a heavyweight that moves like a fucking welterweight. He's so fast. 2, 3 things you should go back and watch is go and watch the immediate sequence of the finish in the Volkov fight. The way he slips, dips, shoots, and just fucks up Volkov is majestic to watch. The guy genuinely moves like a welterweight. Additionally, it's in the Badeau and Arlovsky fights. Aspinall utilizes the oblique kick unbelievably. He almost shuffle oblique kicks and pulls his lead leg back and lunges with his rear leg into his opponent's rear leg as they're throwing a leg kick. I don't know how well you could visualize that. Go watch it and keep an eye out for it, because you can almost see Arlovsky's MCL pop right then and there. And obviously with Curtis Blades, history as a high school wrestler, and he's got that one no contest due to a knee injury. I got to imagine that leg kicks are going to be a huge part of Aspinall's game going into this fight. It's kind of an unknown weakness for him. And as well as that, there's only so many fucking times you can get punched by Francis Ngannou and Derek Lewis before that starts ringing your bell a little bit. So yeah, I think this is definitely a difficult fight for Tom. I'm not in any way doubting that. But I think he's fast enough. I think he's technical enough. And seeing them side by side, Tom's a big lad. Blades is fucking big too, but he doesn't look that big next to Tom. So I got to give Tom the edge on this, but I think it's going to go I think this might actually go longer than all of Tom's other UFC fights combined. But I still see Tom probably getting the dub.
Yeah, Tom Aspinall has a lot of the same question marks that we had about Khamzat Chimaev and that we have about everybody who's super dominant to start a career. It's just, we don't know what we don't know because we haven't seen it because they put everybody away so quickly. But what we do know about Tom Aspinall is that up until this point, he's had phenomenal takedown defense. He's had really good jiu-jitsu and submissions when he's there. He's technical in every aspect of mixed martial arts. He's super fast with his hands, really creative with his strikes and how he mixes up, body, head, leg kick, elbows. I mean, he is your prototypical guy that's super well-rounded, but excels in almost every single area. The question mark for me is really how good is his grappling, especially against top-level competition, because this is definitely by far going to be the best grappler he has faced to date. So how that kind of changes his thought process is the question mark for me. But, I mean, Jamie made a good point about how many times can Curtis Blades get their bell rung by two of the most powerful punchers that the UFC has ever seen and not have lingering side effects from that. Yeah, he stood and he banged and he showed off his stand-up ability against Chris Daukaus, but in hindsight,
who's also super overrated, by the way.
I was just going to say that in hindsight, Chris Daukaus was probably a little bit overrated and too highly elevated and thought of coming into that fight to where Curtis Blades could stand and strike with him. Curtis Blades is not going to stand and strike with Derek Lewis, but I guarantee that Tom Aspinall probably would. Tom Aspinall has the ability to use those leg kicks to stay at range. And, I mean, I don't know if you can take down. I mean, it's probably really, really difficult to take down as big of a guy like Derek, the Black Beast. But that notwithstanding here, Curtis Blades also doesn't really have any submissions, and Tom Aspinall has proven that he can be adept off of his back as well. Curtis Blades' idea is he's going to take you down and then utilize his ground and pound. And I think it was Jamie, too, who mentioned about the knees of Curtis Blades, blowing his knee out in the past, being a wrestler, and then you add in the fact that Tom Aspinall has a specific weapon and target against knees, and then you got to figure that, well, if I'm Tom Aspinall, I have to figure that Curtis Blades is probably going to try to take me down. Curtis Blades, I don't think has any power coming back at Tom that he has to truly, truly worry about that he hasn't seen in other fighters. The safe pick is going Tom Aspinall. I've been as high as saying Tom Aspinall is going to finish Curtis Blades in the second or third round. I've also gone the other way and think that Curtis Blades is going to do a really good job of, switching it up and keeping Tom off his back foot. And this one grinds out to a decision. But in both of those situations, I have Tom Aspinall winning, feeding off the crowd. It's going to be his night. He's culminating the UFC London, UK 2022. I don't think there's any plans to do a third one in 23 or in 22. So I think this is Tom Aspinall's night at the ball. And this is his chance to go out there and really solidify. He's been always historically been the guy to say, hey, I don't need to fight, a ranked guy and move up, too fast. I want to take my time and be well-rounded. And that's the type of personality that turns someone from a great fighter into an Alexander Volkanovski talking about the best of all time. Like, hey, I'm going to take my time. If I get lumped, I'm going to learn from it and move on. But I think Tom Aspinall gets it done. Safe pick is taking him money line. A little bit riskier is taking him by finish in the second or third. I don't know if Curtis Blades is going to get himself into submission issues, but I think even if Blades does take Tom down, I think it's only for a short period of time before Tom Aspinall finds some sneaky way to get back up. Some amazing technique that we haven't seen till now. I mean, he's just well-versed in every aspect, and this guy, I could definitely see him being a champion for a long time. And would love to see John Jones fight Tom Aspinall, but you never will because John Jones is too crafty to put himself in that bad of a position. Any final thoughts on UFC London before we say goodbye?
Go ahead, Jamie.
So I was just going to say, if y'all are looking for a little parlay to spice up the evening, Mohayev inside the distance, Paddy inside the distance, and Molly McCann money line should be looking around plus 500. Based on my earlier checking today, it very well might have gone to plus 4. But that's a spicy little parlay that I think's a little higher than it should be. So that's my my official endorsement pick.
Austin?
Yeah, if I can add, I just really wanted to put my thoughts out there on this main event. Like, I remember when it was first announced, I was like, this is high-level heavyweight MMA action at its best, in my opinion. Because I would think the top 4 most well-rounded fighters in the heavyweight division would be Tom Aspinall, Curtis Blades, Stipe, and Ciryl Gane. I mean, those 4 guys can, they've got good cardio. They can fight anywhere the fight goes. So, fights like these, they don't exactly have the Francis Ngannou or, Derek Lewis type of I'm going to see a big knockout. But this type of fight is very high-level skilled action.
Did you really just say Ciryl Gane and well-rounded in the same sentence?
Yeah.
Bro, go back and watch 260, please.
Well, yeah, I mean,
sorry.
But that's a very outlier, And Francis, he capitalized on, 1, he's freakishly strong, and 2, Ciryl Gane, just gassed out. But, we all know that heavyweights don't exactly have, when you say 5-round cardio, you don't compare it to a lightweight,
Mm-hmm.
But for the heavyweights, Ciryl Gane, Stipe, Curtis Blades, and Tom Aspinall are the 4 most well-rounded heavyweights, in my opinion.
No, I see what he's saying. I mean, Francis did lay on him. It's not like Francis threatened at all on the ground against Ciryl Gane. Not that that's necessarily a point in the Ciryl Gane, bucket, but to the same point, Francis took him down and was able to hold him down. That's great. But, apparently we don't count control unless it's a women's fight, and we have to. So I don't even know what my point was there. But to everybody at home, thank you so much if you've made it this far. Like, comment. Don't forget to subscribe. Let us know who you're taking, what your parlays are. Jamie, that reminds me, I like your parlay, but I would switch Patty inside the distance to Meatball inside the distance, and I would take Patty money line. I also would like to throw – you were willing to bet my kids on Chris Curtis, so add that into the parlay there for a 4-legger. Like, comment, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you check us out on overtimeheroics.net. We got you covered for all things MMA, not just UFC. Jamie is the resident Invicta guy. Check him out for I think you want to shout out your YouTube channel?
Yeah, my YouTube channel is Storm Room Dog Fights. I've got a couple interviews up there with Amber Liebrock, Morgan Freer, and Autumn Norton. They all fought on yesterday's card. And I'm going to be having a few more interviews with him up in the coming weeks once I get back from UFC London. And make sure to follow me on Twitter for all the fight picks and photos and videos and me doing shoeies from the event.
Awesome. I can't wait. Bruno, you go next. Tell the people where to find you.
You can follow me at Brew Crew on Instagram and Twitter, but also have a YouTube page called Bruno D Entertainment. Go over a lot of breakdowns of KOs and fighter history and stuff. So please come check me out. Give me a look.
Austin, over to you, sir.
You can find me on Twitter and Facebook, AustinMar MMA. I also have a YouTube. It's also AustinMar MMA. Haven't really posted anything recent in there, but getting ready to start that back up, get that ball rolling again. And actually, I've got a Curtis Blades interview on that channel from after his fight with Justin Willis. So if you want to take a trip down memory lane, you can check that one out as well.
Awesome, that's great. Definitely check that out. Really topical way to feed that in. You can find me, Tom, at Pick and Fights Tom on Twitter. I do a weekly show doing the breakdowns. We like to get them out on Sundays. It's called Pick and Fights. YouTube channel is Pick and Winners. Check us out at pickandwinners.org. We liked org instead of com because we wanted to be fancy. Everyone, thanks for joining. Hope you enjoyed. Can't wait for the fights.
Peace.
Peace, y'all.